Greetings! Journey Through Torah is back on the air. We're going down the rabbit hole. Gee, the very first verse, we're going to talk about this rabbit hole. You know, there are so many things that we take for granted. We've got to engage our brains and actually use them. You know, you can't do it unless you know Yehovah's words. That's really the key, isn't it? Well, let's read the first verse. It says, every commandment which I command you today. This says y'all, by the way. Every commandment which I command y'all today, y'all must be careful to observe, that y'all may live and multiply and go in and possess the land in which Yehovah swore to your fathers. The first verse is second person plural. Most of the rest of this is going to be first person plural, which is why I have the yous and the yours in yellow. They actually say thy and thine and thee. Because he's talking to each Ezra man individually. But I have a question. Look what it says. Every commandment which I command you today. What is this business with today in Deuteronomy? Do you know, I did a search this morning. 3 times in Genesis it uses the word today. 5 times in Exodus it uses the word today. And it doesn't use it anywhere like what he uses it here. And then 2 times in Leviticus, no times in Numbers, and 51 times it uses the word today in Deuteronomy. These are things that we have to ask ourselves, why is this the case? Which I command you today. Can Moses add to Yehovah's statutes and judgments and ordinances? Up until now, it seems like he's more reminding us. And I think there's even places in here where he says, look in verse 11, his commandments, his judgments, his statutes, which I command you today. There it is again. Like, this is new. But there's going to be many things in Deuteronomy, you guys, that doesn't agree with Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. Now, that's a problem. And you should be aware that that is a problem. Can Moses change anything? Well, let's keep that in mind as we go through the rest of Deuteronomy in the coming days. Very soon, we're going to see there's going to be some outrageous things that are contrary to what Yehovah has already said that Moses is suggesting. Second tithes, third tithes. Give the tithes to the widow and orphan and the priest who lives among you. What? No, where do the tithes go? The tithes go to the priests, not the priest in your gates. They go to the Levites. The Levites are going to tithe to the priests. Well, let's just keep our head on our shoulders. Let's go to the next verse. It says, and thou. So now here we are, second person singular. And thou shall remember that Yehovah, thy Elohim, led thee all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble thee, to test thee, to know what is in thy heart, whether thou would keep his commandments or not. So this is the commandments that we're talking about, the ones that we've known for 40 years. To know what is in thine heart. Thy heart, I guess would be thy heart. And I want to remind us, we're not talking about lady hearts. When we're talking about the you, who are we talking about? We're talking about Israel's seed, a.k.a. the children of Israel, a.k.a. and pervertedly known as the children of Israel. We're talking about Ezra men. Oh, we're going to have something. We're going to talk about that today, Ezra men. Yeah, that's going to be fun. So now we're talking about thee. Who's thee? Thee is each Ezra man that Yehovah is talking to. You're not talking to the ger, not talking to the ladies, not talking to the children, not talking to the servants. He's talking to the Ezra men. And thou shall remember that Yehovah, thy Elohim, remember Elohim, lawmaker and judge, who is the servants' Elohim. I would argue it's their master. The ladies' Elohim is their master. They're Baal. Same with the children. But men, especially Yehovah's Ezra men, they follow only him. Whether or not you would keep his commandments or not. Whether you would keep his commandments or not. Here, on the right, let's read this. This is Jeremiah 17. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, Yehovah, search the heart. Remember, we talked about the heart being that house within the house that only Yehovah knows. How does he test it? He says, I test the mind to give every man, he's talking about men, Ish. When we're talking about Ish, we're talking about Ezra man, according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doings. Yehovah can see our heart and understand our heart by what we do. Remember, man looks at the flesh. Yehovah looks at the heart. Samuel was going to take the eldest brother or eldest son of Jesse. And Yehovah told him, don't look at the outward appearance because I look at the heart. The heart's what's important to me. Where was the youngest? David, out taking care of the sheep. Well, here's Jeremiah 18. It says, now therefore, speak to the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, saying, thus says Yehovah, behold, I am fashioning disaster and devising a plan against you. Return now every one from his evil ways and make your ways and your doings good. What's he saying? Turn to my commandments. And they said, that is hopeless. So we will walk according to our own plans. And we will everyone obey the dictates of his evil heart. Funny that they would even call their heart evil. But it's right. It is. The heart is desperately wicked. It's us. Well, let's continue. 3. So he humbled you. No, he humbled thee and allowed thee to hunger. I'm going to read it on the right here. You can follow on the left, but I'll read it on the right. You can see where the difference is. So he hungered thee, and humbled thee, and hungered thee. It's the same thing. Hungered thee, and he hungered thee, and fed thee manna which thou did not know, nor did thy fathers know, that he might make thee to know that the man, look, it says man here. This actually says the man, Adam, that the man shall not live by bread alone. But look what it says. But by every word that proceeds from the mouth of Yehovah, the man lives. This is the born again experience, you guys. This is what we're talking about. You can't just live by bread alone. If you're not going to learn to follow our spiritual Elohim, our Ruach Elohim, Spirit Elohim, you won't live. You're going to die. That point is going to be made again here in a second. So that was verse 3. Here is verse 4. Thy garments did not wear out on thee, nor did thy foot swell these 40 years. Thou did not know in thy heart that as a man chastens his son, hear that? As a man chastens his son, so Yehovah thy Elohim chastened thee. This is very interesting to me. You know, I heard a lady the other day talking about Mother God. You know, people are so brain dead, they don't even think anymore. And it does say, as a man chastens his son, so we have a man chastening another man, so Yehovah chastens thee. I think I put a note here for this. I did. Yehovah is spirit. We've got to understand he's not a father. He's kind of like as a father does this, such and such. But Yehovah is spirit. We worship him in spirit and truth. Faith is keeping his statutes and his judgments and his ordinances in spite of what the world is saying. You know, it's really hard sometimes to not do what the world tells you you're supposed to do. But because we have separated ourselves to only Yehovah, for myself, I gave back my driver's license in 2005. I surrendered. It was called voluntary surrender of a driver's license. I remember my then wife's attorney complaining to the judge, Your Honor, we have no authority over this man. He even gave back his driver's license. You see, that's the key component to gathering their authority in your life. Now, I haven't worked with the Social Security number for 25 years, 26 years. But I don't think that is near as consequential as dealing with this driver's license and separating yourself from the world. Remember we talked about a Ben-Nakar. We talked about 4 different kinds of men in Exodus 12. We talked about the Ben-Nakar, which is the son of the foreigner, the foreign son. They're all men. We talked about the Toshab. The Toshab kind of lives in the land, but he's not a part of the political system. Then we have the Ger, who has left the kingdom of his birth and joined himself to Yehovah's people. And finally, we have the Ezra man, who actually circumcised himself, all the men of his household, as a ger, and became the Ezra man. That is the man who has the son. Remember what Moses was told to tell Pharaoh: let my son, my firstborn. That's the second birth right there. Firstborn of the Spirit. Israel, go that he may serve me. I like this verse on the right, Isaiah 62. Look what it says. As a young man, a Bekor, marries a Betula. Marries. Look at the word they use for marries, you guys. It's Baal. They translate it as marries, but it's Baal. Lords. As a young man lords over a virgin, masters a virgin, so thou shalt master thy sons. Talking about Yehovah mastering his sons. As a bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall thy Elohim rejoice over thee. So beautiful. But Yehovah is spirit. His people follow him. He gets disciplined. We get disciplined by him, for he chastens us. As a man chastens his son, so Yehovah chastens thee. Well, let's continue. Therefore, went too far. Therefore, you shall keep the commandments of Yehovah thy Elohim. Walk in his ways and fear him. For Yehovah thy Elohim, lawmaker and judge, is bringing thee into a good land, a land of brooks of water, fountains and springs that flow out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land in which thou wilt eat bread without scarcity. Yeah, we have all kinds of wheat and barley available to us, in which thou wilt lack nothing. A land whose stones are iron, and out of those hills you can dig copper. Now look what he says. This is something that I think we should think about. It says, when you have eaten and are full, then thou shalt bless Yehovah thy Elohim for the good land which he has given thee. Do you hear what the dinner prayer is about? It's after we've eaten and are full, then we're thanking Yehovah, remembering the good things that he has done for us, the good land that he has given us, the behemoth who thrive on the land that we're having for dinner, being grateful that he has given them to us. He says, beware that thou do not forget thy Elohim by not keeping his commandments, his judgments, his statutes, which I command thee today. His people keep his commandments. Again, spiritual Elohim. People following a spiritual Elohim. That's faith. Lest when you have eaten and are full, build beautiful houses and dwell in them. And when your herds and your flocks multiply, your silver and gold, thy silver and thy gold are multiplied, and all that thou hast is multiplied. Then your heart is lifted up, and you forget Yehovah thy Elohim, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt. from the house of bondage, who brought you out, who led thee through the great and terrible wilderness. Same words that we used here when we were talking about a great and terrible El. This was in here. This is Gadal, and this word comes from Yareh. Yareh, frighten. They say revere, but we're talking about fear. We're talking about dread. This is serious stuff. In Deuteronomy 7:21, look what it said. It talked about, here it is right here. You shall not be terrified of them, for Yehovah thy Elohim, the great. No, I take it back. A great and terrible, fearful, for Yehovah is a great and fearful Elohim, or Yehovah, your great. How do you say that? A great. Yehovah, a great and awesome, fearful Elohim. El, it actually says El, it doesn't say Elohim. El is among you, among thee. Same words, only that's talking about the wilderness that he brought us through here. Let's go back. Didn't finish the verse. Who led thee through the great and the terrible wilderness, in which were serpents, Nakash. We saw the Nakash before. We talked about it before. Remember, we raised up a staff. Aaron raised up a staff with a Nakash on it, and it healed people who looked at it. We're going to end up worshiping it in later on in time. Going to have to get rid of it. And scorpions, and a thirsty land where there was no water, who brought water for you out of the flinty rock. He keeps asking exactly the same things. Let me go back there. There we go. Yeah. Who led you? Who led you? No, he's really saying, who led you through the great and terrible? Who fed you in the wilderness with the man? It's not a question, it's a statement. Who led you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers did not know, that he might humble thee, that he might test thee to do thee good in the end. This is what we talked about before. He goes on. And thou said in thy heart, my power and the might of my hand have gained me this wealth. He's saying, don't say that. And thou shalt remember Yehovah thy Elohim, for it is he who gives thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to thy fathers, as it is this day. 2 more verses. This is it. And it shall be, if thou by any means forget Yehovah thy Elohim. Who's he talking to? Keep in mind, he's talking to Israel's seed. He's not talking to any Egyptians. He's not talking to any Americans. He's not talking to any Europeans. He's talking to Israel's seed. And it shall be, if thou by any means forget Yehovah thy Elohim. You know, there's a lot of people who call Yehovah their Elohim, their God. But they don't keep any of his commandments. They don't even know what they are. And follow other Elohim. That's what they do. They follow other Elohim, lawmakers and judges, and serve them and worship them. I testify against, here he goes. Look at, it's been thee all the way through. Now it's y'all again. I testify against y'all this day that y'all shall surely perish. Think about that, you guys. He's not talking about the rest of the world. They're already goners. He's talking about you getting this wealth, being satisfied with yourselves, thinking somehow you did it for yourselves, and forgetting him and not keeping his ways. Again, it started in the second person singular. Now it's finishing in the plural, in the second person plural. He's talking to each man in Israel, the men who already have left the kingdom of their birth and come into covenant with him. And he's saying, y'all be destroyed if you go back to following other Elohim and serving and worshiping them. Well, what does that say about the rest of the world who isn't Ezra men? At least the Ger, who joined themselves to Israel when Passover comes, they're going to become Ezra. I hope a lot of Ezra men or a lot of Ger became Ezra men last night. I kept Passover by myself out of the back 40. But I put the Gentiles are SOL, shit out of luck, and goners. They have learned lies, worthless and unprofitable things. This Jesus narrative, it isn't going to cut it. It isn't going to cut it. Yehovah doesn't change. His word is going to endure forever. If you follow other Elohim and serve and worship them, I testify against you all. This day you all shall surely perish. Last verse. As the nations which Yehovah destroys before you, so you shall perish, because you would not be obedient to the voice of Yehovah, your Elohim. Well, I want to encourage everyone to rethink their foundations for the word. You know, we work hard every week. The first 3 chapters here, let me do this. This is, I'll go here. I'm going to go to Journey Through Torah. Here is the first, here's how you get to my weekly link, by the way, which we're on right now. But down here is the first 3 lessons. This wasn't my most recent classes. This was the second time we went through Torah. But if you go through 1, 2, and 3, and Elohim said, creation of the man and his woman, and the fall of man, you begin to see the relationship of a man to Yehovah and the relationship of a woman to her man. It's foundational. And taking and learning the Torah, Genesis, at least through Numbers. Not fired up about Deuteronomy. There's some really good stuff in Deuteronomy, but there's some really, I think, poisonous stuff in Deuteronomy. But by going chapter by chapter, you get a foundation, a firm foundation for seeing the truth. And I want to encourage you to do that. Well, you guys, I have to say goodbye here. Thank you for joining me. We'll pick it up again next week in Deuteronomy 9. Thank you now, and Yehovah bless you. Bye now.